Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a deeply fascinating medical mystery. It's one brought forward by Dr. Bruce Kaplan, a former dentist and chiropractor who has actually lived with multiple sclerosis for 45 years. Through his newsletter, Still Standing, Dr. Kaplan highlights a profound contradiction in modern neurology. It's a paradox that honestly challenges everything we think we know about how we track and treat chronic neurological diseases. Okay, let's just dive right into this. Imagine sitting across from your doctor. They look at your test results, they smile, and they tell you that your disease is completely under control. There are 0 new lesions on your scan. Medically speaking, you're stable. And yet, you know clearly and unmistakably that your physical condition is declining. This was the exact, incredibly frustrating reality Dr. Kaplan and a friend of his were discussing. By every standard metric used to assess MS activity, they were totally stable. But their lived experience told a completely different story. So how is that possible? Seriously, how can the hard medical evidence completely contradict a patient's reality? Think of this like a classic locked room mystery. The room is completely secure, the monitors show absolutely no signs of a break-in, but somehow the damage just keeps happening anyway. To solve this, we really have to look closely at the tools we're using to investigate the crime scene in the first place. Which brings us to our first major clue, the anatomy clue. White matter versus gray matter. We need to uncover what standard MRI machines are actually designed to detect. Take a look at this comparison. Standard MRI scans for MS are essentially built to detect one specific thing, and that's new inflammatory lesions in the brain's white matter and the spinal cord. White matter contains the long nerve fibers wrapped in myelin, so when the immune system launches an acute attack here, bam, it lights up on the scan. But look over at the right side of the slide. The gray matter. This is where the nerve cell bodies themselves, the actual command centers, live. Emerging research confirms that MS symptoms don't primarily come from those flashy white matter lesions. They come from the gradual loss of these nerve cell bodies. And the most shocking part? This gray matter shrinkage happens quietly and continuously, almost completely invisible to a standard MRI scan. So, the absolutely crucial point here is this. A clean MRI doesn't mean the disease has magically stopped. It simply means there are no new acute inflammatory attacks on the white matter. It tells you literally nothing about the continuous, quiet shrinkage happening in your gray matter. And this perfectly explains our paradox. Patients are getting worse because the gray matter damage is driving their symptoms, hiding just out of sight from the machine. Moving on to part 2, the pharmaceutical evidence, a smoking gun. Because if the MRI machines are missing the real damage, well, what about the treatments? Now, what's really fascinating about this data is the sheer contrast. Recently, a highly effective class of MS drugs was developed that works by depleting B cells. In clinical trials, these drugs did an amazing job. They significantly reduced the number of MS relapses. But look down at that bottom row. Brain shrinkage and disability progression continued at the exact same rate. Let that sink in for a second. Patients were having far fewer relapses, sure, but they were still getting worse just as fast as before. There is really only one logical conclusion we can draw from this. Relapses are not the disease itself. They're merely symptoms of a chronic underlying process that just keeps going even when you suppress those relapses. Dr. Kaplan beautifully describes MS as a smoldering fire that periodically bursts into flames. Current blockbuster drugs? They're incredibly good at suppressing the flames. But nobody is addressing that smoldering fire beneath them. So what exactly is this smoldering fire? Well, this leads us to a massive paradigm shift. MS might actually be a disease of impaired myelin repair. During remission, the brain continuously tries to repair its damaged myelin. But here's the catch. This repair process is broken. The newly formed myelin is structurally compromised. It's vulnerable. And as it breaks down, it generates these oxidized, damaged components. And guess what? The immune system recognizes those damaged components as foreign threats. Which brings us to a wildly powerful analogy. If the immune system is reacting to genuinely damaged, oxidized components in the brain, then the immune system isn't malfunctioning at all. It's not confused. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The immune system is not the arsonist starting the fire. It is the fire department responding to a fire that it didn't start and honestly cannot put out because no one is stopping what's actually feeding the flames. Section 3. The innocent bystander theory. This completely changes how we view the body's internal battle. You see, the standard medical model assumes the immune system mistakenly targets myelin, But in Dr. Kaplan's new framework, myelin isn't the target at all. It's just an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire. The destruction of myelin is simply collateral damage from a battle the immune system is actually fighting correctly against real foreign threats. And if this is true, suppressing the immune system with heavy drugs doesn't just fail to solve the core problem, it actively prevents your body from fighting the actual enemy. Which brings us to Section 4, investigating the lingering triggers. Because we have to ask, what started this? If the immune system is fighting a real enemy, what exactly started this loop and why won't it stop? Dr. Kaplan dug deep into his own 45-year history to find what he calls the elements of his perfect storm. These unresolved original triggers that pushed his burdened system past its breaking point. For him, these included documented heavy metal burdens like mercury toxicity, persistent latent infections like the Epstein-Barr virus, and a required hepatitis B vaccine he received right before his first symptoms appeared. Now, he stresses that MS is likely an umbrella diagnosis, and your personal triggers might be entirely different, but the core concept remains absolutely crucial. These triggers might still be present, actively driving the disease today. To really understand how an old trigger can still be an active threat, just look at this staggering number. The estimated half-life of the neurotoxin mercury in the human brain is 20 to 27 years. 20 to 27 years! Mercury exposure actively depletes the structural phospholipids that myelin desperately needs to repair itself. So a trigger like this doesn't just start the disease decades ago and disappear. It acts as a constant roadblock to repair, literally feeding the cycle of damage year after year. And this brilliantly illustrates another element Kaplan explored, a really fascinating peer-reviewed population study from France regarding the hepatitis B vaccine. We can see the timeline clearly here. In the early 1990s, a mass vaccination campaign began. By the mid-90s, the incidence of MS rose significantly. In the late 90s, the campaign was actually suspended due to public concern. And finally, in the 2000s, the MS incidence returned to its previous baseline. Now, I want to be super clear. The research on this is genuinely contested, and we are absolutely not drawing conclusions or taking sides here. We're presenting this simply as a population-level signal. It's just a question worth asking when investigating what might trigger an already burdened immune system. And finally, Section 5, a different approach, removing the fuel. How do we fix this? So, if we know the MRI is measuring the wrong thing, and the drugs are treating the symptoms rather than the disease, and the original triggers might still be present in the body, how do we finally address the root cause? Well, the path forward looks entirely different from what mainstream neurology typically offers. It isn't about aggressively suppressing the immune system. Actually, scratch that. It's about removing the fuel entirely. Step 1, investigate and remove those unresolved original triggers. Then, rather than shutting down your body's defenses, use known nutritional and biochemical building blocks to support it. You restore the structural phospholipids for myelin repair, you support the mitochondria that power that repair, and you reduce the oxidative stress driving the whole immune reaction. The building blocks exist. It's all about supporting the body's own incredible repair mechanisms. As Dr. Kaplan powerfully notes, treating a disease by fighting the fire department while totally ignoring the arsonist has defeated every drug aimed at stopping it. It is time to change the investigation. We shouldn't be asking why the immune system is attacking the myelin. We should be asking, what is my immune system reacting to, and is it still there? I really encourage you to think about this paradigm shift, question conventional wisdom, and perhaps investigate the lingering triggers in your own perfect storm. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.